right, this is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to give 7 questions that I have for Marxists. Since many of you think you have the right to determine which political and social views of black people are acceptable, why should we ignore the anti-blackness of Karl Marx? Labor movements have been historically anti-black in America. So just like I asked the MAGA people, when did we achieve this working class solidarity that you guys are talking about? Why do you spend a tremendous amount of time engaging with the ideas of right wingers and focusing your efforts towards finding a compromise with them, and then simply ignoring African Americans who haven't bought into what you're selling? With Marxists having very little success in American politics, and the fact that the African American voter bloc outnumbers leftists, why is it that y'all think you can dictate to us what our political strategy should be? If the workers who oppose your goals will still benefit from your universal policies, and you only want to address our plight through your universal policies, why do you think we have any incentive to push for your agenda instead of our own? If you figure out a way to win without us, we will still benefit from whatever you're talking about in the same exact way as if we supported you. So how does it make any sense for us to abandon our own solutions to focus on your solutions? Since a lot of you only want to engage with the world through the lens of economics, and you claim to be on the cutting edge of political theory, why is it that you don't incorporate modern economic theories into your discourse? There are current theories like stratification economics that attempt to explain the influence that racism has on markets. The definition of reparations: the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. So if we're talking about the people who descend from American chattel slavery, whose lineage has gone through black code laws, peonage, segregation, all of America's racist housing policies, and so on, why is it that you think you can change the discussion to a conversation about general poverty instead of focusing on the racist discrimination that has been inflicted on my people for centuries?
So you're a proponent of, and really one of the central authors of, a notion called stratification economics. In a nutshell, what is stratification economics?
So stratification economics, well, it is an approach really in reaction to the inability of mainstream or orthodox economics to explain persisting group inequality. And we think that largely that inability is related to their myopic view of how individual agents, if properly incentivized in markets that are unfettered by discrimination, can achieve social mobility.
So there's a whiteboard, and there's me with my preparation and my effort and my ability. And the outcome is a verdict only on my ability in that traditional notion. But when context matters, when inferences people draw about who you are and what you are and so forth, the market's not a whiteboard. The context is not a whiteboard. And you're part of a group in how you're branded rather than just as an individual.
That's exactly right. Stratification economics seeks to understand better how group formation and how individual agents can invest in that group and its role in creating hierarchies that are stratified by domains like gender, domains like race, domains like religious affiliation, and how that process actually creates advantages for individuals. I mean, you probably have heard things like the property rights of whiteness. Well, that is a term that's often absent from the economics profession, but it's somewhat ironic because that term very well has notions of optimization and even rationalization. It would make sense for somebody who gets an economic return from something like their race, their whiteness, to invest in that if they are focused on their individual well-being as well as their relative group positioning.
So some of the context and the structures that we see in society come from politics.
Yes.
And politics, by what you might call belonging to, reinforcing, and supporting a group, might benefit your group at the expense of other groups.
Economics could learn from other disciplines. Economics could benefit from a more political lens to understand how structures are created through politics, for example, from political science, why it might make sense for you to create rules that benefit yourself, your own well-being, and your group. Economics can learn from things like disciplines like sociology to understand the role of identity formation, and why there might be economic returns to investing in your identity and your identity formation, as well as the social hierarchical positioning that identity could create for individuals and groups. You know, we have a focus on civil rights, but you know, to his credit, FDR as well as that movement tried to make things like the right to proper housing, the right to a job, these things as basic human rights that the government would have a role in fulfilling. And if we want to reach a society that's inclusive, I think we very well need to reach that. I mean, the critique of the New Deal would be that it also led to a structuring of inequality, because in the Great Compromise, to get a lot of it passed and to get Southern whites to go on board, they were allowed to maintain their system of Jim Crow. So blacks were excluded from a lot of those rights. You know, things like if you were a domestic worker or if you were an agricultural worker, jobs that were something like 80% overrepresented with black individuals, they were excluded from things like Social Security, things like some of the labor rules, and as well as some of the other benefits. Another compromise that also structured in this inequality was allowing local determination of how the funds would be allocated. So if you leave in the hands of a Jim Crow apartheid-like system that was racist in blatant forms, the allocation of these resources, then it will be structured in a way that benefits one population as opposed to the other. So that, you know, one thing that we could think about is how this great labor movement that took place and actually led to the creation of a white asset-based middle class, because it went beyond just labor. It went beyond just giving individuals jobs. It created real wealth, an asset-based middle class.
Housing in particular.
Yep, exactly right. A debt-free college education. There was even resources put aside so that people could start businesses. All these things led to access to the economic security of an asset that's going to appreciate over your lifetime. What's largely absent from this narrative is how blacks in particular were systematically excluded from some of these benefits.